Welcome to a special edition of The Look and Sound of Leadership, an ongoing series of executive coaching tips designed to help you be perceived in the workplace the way you want to be perceived. I'm Tom Henschel, your executive coach, and today we're talking about nice girls don't get the corner office. When I started coaching executives back in the 1990s, the profession was still very young. Most often, coaching was seen as a black mark. If you were getting coaching, you were probably getting fired. A woman named Lois Frankel found that position short-sighted and offensive. She thought companies should give coaching to their high performers. She also looked around and she saw the playing field that women had to play on in the corporate setting, and she thought it was completely inequitable. So she began writing books to help women in the workplace. She also started a coaching company called Corporate Coaching International, and I was one of the founding coaches. A few years go by, it's 2004, one of her books becomes a worldwide global phenomenon. Nice girls don't get the corner office. And suddenly, overnight, Lois is a world-renowned author. Lois has been traveling the world ever since, and I am so glad to say that some of that traveling I have done with her. We've been friends and colleagues ever since the early days in the 1990s. In the spring of 2026, Lois published an updated and revised third edition of Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, and I had her on the show to talk about it. The podcast episode has one 10-minute portion of what you're about to hear. It also has a whole lot of other ideas that you won't hear here. What you are going to hear is two old friends talking about a topic they have been talking about for years: women in the workplace. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lois Frankel. So thanks for being here.
Tom, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you. I know you don't usually do this, so I'm honored.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk to you. And I'm glad to talk to you about this book. I have such a sense of time about the book, right? That when this new version, the third edition, came, really one of the first things I did was I went to my bookshelf and I got the first edition from 2004 and just looked at the two tables of contents and how different they are. Like, they're radically different. And for you, who's been talking to women for 20 some years about all this stuff, can you just start us by thinking about what's changed and what hasn't for women in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a good question, Tom. And you're right, they are radically different, in part because of exactly what you're saying, is my talking to women for the past 20 years. The fact is, when the first edition was written 20 years ago, I was basing it on my coaching experiences, working with very specific women. But over the 20 years, I've gotten to meet women who I haven't coached, who've shared their stories with me, who write to me, who've attended my keynote addresses. And so there's a really such a larger population of women that I've interacted with. So I've really gotten to understand more what they wanted. That's number one. Number two, another reason it's different is that I'm different.
Yeah.
Right? You know, that as I've gotten older, I have become more reluctant to be as careful as I was in the first book about, I always say I'm a recovering nice girl. So, I have, and as I talk about in the introduction, I feel as if I'm taking the gloves off. Right?
You made me laugh when I can't remember how you phrased it, but it made me laugh about you've gotten more, it wasn't explicit, but something about just being bolder, more direct. And just the way you wrote it made me laugh.
Oh, good. I'm glad, because
Yeah,
that's partly, I want people to understand that sense of humor part that I have about it. And I think we all have to have a sense of humor when we're talking about some of these issues that are really critical for women. So when you ask, what's the difference? There's those two differences, first of all.
Yep.
Okay. The people who have contributed in their own way to me, and then also my own experiences. I mean, just my aging process and, the additional experiences I've had. And then there's the third piece, which is, and I talk a little bit about this in the new edition, that when they first approached me to do a third edition, I said no, because I felt as if I didn't have anything more to say.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, yeah. It's really very much in the very beginning. So I could see how you might have missed that. And so I said no, that I didn't want to do it. And then we had something that was called an election. And
Uh,
I saw the writing on the wall. It was very clear to me that what was happening for women was an undoing of so much of the progress we had made. When I was first asked to do this was in 2024. When I was first asked to do it, I felt like, we've made some progress here. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to be a conscience for something that's no longer an issue. And certainly I knew there were still issues, but not like I knew beginning at the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025. It was very clear to me.
wow, that's a big motivator.
Yeah, it was a big motivator because I could see the handwriting on the wall, and then I saw all everything I had worked for like 40 years, having worked in affirmative action and DEI and equal employment opportunity. I mean, I was involved in all of that at the
Yeah,
beginning,
yeah,
and it was all being dismantled. And so not only was it a personal affront to me and it was discouraging, but also I realized that women, as a result, were going to have a harder road to go down. And I wanted to give them even more tools for how to successfully maneuver the road. And then there was one last thing, and that is the workplace changed over 20 years. The fact is that we didn't have remote work 20 years ago, right? That
right.
was
No
on the
kidding.
radar, right?
Yeah.
Social media, it was not like it is today. Just how what women want and need has changed. Their willingness to ask for it. There's generational differences in terms of what work means and what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. And so I felt like all of that had to be addressed in reality.
So can you talk about some specifics, big ones that stand out for you? What's different and what's the same?
Yeah, I think, well, what's different is that, and some of this was from a survey that I did. I did do
I,
that survey.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when I started doing the research, I wanted to see is there as much difference as I think that there is, or is there not? So I really just wanted to see. And I was surprised, and it was across countries. So this was not just in the United States. This was across countries. It included people, from as far as from here, as Australia, New Zealand, Africa, Asia, England, right? So we had people from all over the world and women responding. And what I realized was that they shared common concerns. One of the things that they said was a good thing that happens in the past 20 years, because essentially I asked, how have your experiences changed over the past 20 years? And people said that they felt as if there were processes and procedures in place to stem blatant discrimination. So we had gotten that far,
And that
okay?
was new. That was within the
And that
last 20 years.
exactly. Things in place designed to stem blatant discrimination and to encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. So we started seeing things like affinity groups, or we call them affinity groups or employee resource groups. We started seeing more of those that would address the needs of unique groups in the workplace, and that they saw all that as positive. At some point, however, they said there was backlash from that. That
I'm wondering
people,
what that means.
yeah. And so what that means is that it was being described as too woke. That if you bought into this stuff, then you're just being too woke. So that there was this cancel culture that was starting even before the presidential election here in the United States
And across countries?
and across countries.
Really?
Yes, that there was this cancel culture so that, oh, yeah, now we have these things in place, but if you go to use them, there's something wrong with you. Like, why would you need this?
Wow.
And then you fast forward just a few years, because remember the survey was done, it was done about in the summer of 2024, I'd say. Because when people don't know, it takes a long time to write a book, to get it edited, to actually get it out. It was probably a good 18 months to 2 years from inception to publication. And so then subsequently to the survey, you had people saying things like, well, like Mark Zuckerberg, saying leadership has become too feminized. Men need to really go in there and be more masculine. You saw people like J.D. Vance speaking disparagingly about women who chose not to have children, right? These crazy cat women or whatever he said. I mean, I don't even remember because I think it was
Well,
horrible.
but
I think it was deplorable.
and
Yeah.
Pete Hegseth with the military.
Exactly, precisely. So what you saw happening then was not only a cancel culture, but it was an open decimation of all the progress that we had made over not just 20 years, because I worked in EEO in the 1980s, so it's been 40 years. We saw really this being just totally demolished. Many of the affinity groups, for example, and the DEI programs that were in place, they were totally dismantled.
I've always thought of you as someone who the injustice in the world pisses you off. You must be so pissed off.
Oh, it, Tom, that doesn't even that hardly covers how I feel. It's like when people see me now, they say, "We're not going to be talking about that Donald Trump again, are we?" And I said, "We are going to talk about how it is impacting all of us as long as we have to." I get it on LinkedIn, for example, with people saying, "This is not a forum for these discussions." And me saying things like, if this isn't the forum with thinking, smart, educated people to talk about what is being done to women, how leadership has totally devolved into what I call a broocracy, right?
Huh.
If this is what not the place to talk about it, then there is no place to talk about it.
Well, the thing that I respond to in the book and just talking to you is this isn't new for you. This isn't really about Trump. You've been talking about this stuff, as you say, forever. And when I think about you teaching me to coach, I often say you taught me about women's issues, partly because I've been reading your books for 20 some years, It's like, so this is not new for you.
No, it's not new for me. What's new is the open hostility toward it.
Right.
And I think that's what riled me up again is that, I felt like a sleeping lion, right? It's like we finally had gotten somewhere. I felt like we were really getting somewhere. I guess that was it.
Mm.
And there were people when we talked about the Me Too movement, right? That people felt as if women were starting to have more power around those kinds of issues. Now, one of the things I always said was, you only have more power around the issue if you have wealth. The fact is that women who have no wealth, women who are living at the poverty level, for example, there's no Me Too for them. And so that's
Mm.
why we have to do it for all of us.
Ooh, I like
Um,
that.
yeah. And so we were starting to see that, and it came to not only a grinding halt, but went backwards. And one more thing, Tom, and that's what Susan Faludi talked about in her book, Backlash, right? Susan Faludi wrote a book, and I don't know how many years ago this was.
Yeah.
It could have been 30 years now. I know it's more than 20. It could be there. It could have been 40 years. But anyway, she talked about the fact that as women get more power, we will continue to see more backlash. I
Mm.
had you remember my old agent, Bob Silverstein, who has
Yeah.
passed away
Yeah.
subsequently. He wanted me to write a book called The War Against Women. He said, I really feel as if and this was, gee, he passed away maybe 8 or 10 years ago. Um, he said, I'm seeing this war against women waged.
Mm.
Well, he should see it now.
Yeah. One of the things I love about how you think and how you write is that it's very empowering. And I was really struck by you talking about taking control for women. And there were two things that you wrote, and they're not like on the same page. They're a bit of ways from each other, but I loved them both because one talked about that you want women to read the book so that they can take control without being controlling, which I thought was just a great kind of perception, and I think addresses some fears that some people have of like, if I do this, I'm going to appear controlling and people, right?
Mhm.
But that's not the intention.
No.
And the other thing that you said that I experience in my clients is that many women equate the idea of taking control with taking something away from someone else.
Mhm.
And it's so not that. And I love that you called it out. I thought it was really profound.
Mhm.
So the what I'd love to talk about with you is two women that I am coaching at the moment
Okay.
who both happen to be on a kind of extreme. I don't think they're in the middle of the bell curve. I think they're both fighting with issues that I think are your issues to coach. Do you know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
was wondering if
Mhm.
you would coach me so I can coach them, or we can talk about each of them.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'd like to learn more about them and also how you're approaching it. Just before we get into that, because something you said made me realize that this has to be said because it has to be said every single time I have a conversation about my book. Nice girls don't get the corner office doesn't mean you can't be nice. And all too often, that's exactly what people think. And you may see some of my dialogues I get into on LinkedIn with people who say, Lois Frankel said you can't be nice and have a corner office. Well, you didn't read the book. Because what you would know I was saying is you can't be the nice little girl you were taught to be in childhood and expect to achieve your adult goals. And it is about you taking control back of your life, but not controlling anybody else's. And that's all I really have ever wanted for women was for them to take back control of their own lives.
And something that I say to women that, again, I learned from you is, and it is not a level playing field,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yes, take control. And part of that is recognizing you're not on a level playing field.
Yes, thank you for saying that because it, it it has been true for a while. It was starting to get better. I felt like the
Right.
playing field was starting to level a little bit, and I think we've seen it go in the other direction now.
Yeah. So, let me tell you about a woman named Grace. So, Grace, she's a nice girl. I have a feeling that it's old in her life. She is now at a senior level in a financial organization, and she's clearly super smart. Um, and I love being with her during our coaching conversations.
Who doesn't like being with a nice girl?
Well, yes, partly because one of the things that I'm on her about is, for example, she'll apologize if she wants to ask me a question, or she'll ask permission to ask me a question. It's like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? It's stuff like
Mhm.
that. So one of the things that I wonder, and by the way, she has trouble in big meetings. She does. It sounds like she runs her team great, but when she's in like her boss's meeting and she's with her peers, that she has trouble speaking up. And I just wonder on that one issue how you might coach her. What would you say to her?
Well, Tom, you and I often approach these coaching situations a little bit differently, and I've learned a lot from you, and I think you've learned a little bit from me.
I have indeed.
And so, what went through my head when you described her was first of all, were there any cultural issues at play here?
No,
D- So, it's not as if she's anything other than a Caucasian woman, correct?
true,
Okay.
correct.
Because sometimes when there's cultural issues, they come into play, as we both know, having done so much work in Asia. The second question that came to mind for me was when you said she does well with her team. It's in these meetings with her peers and her management.
I
that
think
she
so.
seems to feel as if she needs to hold back. I would want to know what those people represent to her. Because I can remember coaching a woman that was very similar to how you described. And she was great with her team. Her team loved her. When she got to management meetings, and she happened to be the executive director of a nonprofit.
Oh, huh.
And so for her board was her executive team,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
She became tongue tied. She couldn't talk at all with these people.
Wow.
And otherwise she was articulate. She represented her nonprofit beautifully. It was like I thought there's something old here. And you know that this is where you and I differ, because I want to know what's the old that's getting in the way of today. So I would want to ask Grace, where in your life or from whom did you get a message that it wasn't okay to speak up, especially to authority? Or even to people like maybe like your siblings or your older siblings, things like that, because they could be peers as well. Or and are they most, because you said it's financial services, so it tells me it's a lot of men,
Yes, I think it is a lot of men.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
So there's something here that is specifically gender related. I don't know if she would feel the same if the groups were more mixed. I don't know. But see, that's always my coaching question for people.
I love that coaching question. I will take that to her. I look forward.
Do you
S-
have
s-
do you have an idea of what she might say?
no, except I think it is old. That is my sense, is I think this is old in her life. And we've talked a little bit about her. I gave her an exercise about it, but no, I don't know what she's going to tell me. So,
Okay.
yeah, I
And
don't know about her family of origin yet. None of that.
okay. And so once we figure that out, and the old can be family of origin, it could be, in the case of this woman executive director that I was referring to, she had a brother who was much older, maybe 10 years older or so, and he used to tease her mercilessly
Oh,
about how
no.
stupid she was, and the way that some older brothers do. I know you weren't that way as a brother at all.
And I was
Uh,
the younger, so
yeah, but you wouldn't have done it anyway.
probably not.
And so it was very clear what it was that she was afraid that somebody was going to say something to tease her or to embarrass her in some way. So I think the first thing is that Grace needs to get in touch with the behavior of holding back is protecting her in some way. So what is it protecting her from?
Nice.
Is it, you know, teasing? Is it negative comments? It could be, mom and dad just said simple things. And I don't know how old she is either. About how old is Grace?
She's in her 40s.
Okay. So it's not as if she's a much older woman that would have gotten the message girls are to be seen and not heard. Although, could have been.
Maybe. Don't know, but maybe. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
know.
we don't know because you and I even had a male client like that who was very religious and was taught to always turn the other cheek, to not speak up and speak out. So that's the place I would start with her.
Okay.
And then I would move into more of my Tom behaviors, which is, as you often say, well, I don't know if you still say it anymore, but I've heard you say when we used to talk about clients together, I'm not as concerned about where it came from as I just want to change the behavior,
Yeah.
right? And we both want to change the behavior. So I think from that point, you do have to give her some baby steps for what can she do to get her voice out there. And they have to be baby steps. And so for someone like Grace, I think I would start by coaching her to amplify other people. Now, I wouldn't normally say this, okay?
Huh.
Because normally I want women to amplify themselves. But I think for someone like Grace, if she has a hesitance speaking up and is afraid, if she amplifies what other people say, particularly women, and amplification is just the process of affirming what you've heard.
Good idea.
Yeah. Good
like that.
idea. Here's why I agree with that. Here's why I would support that. Can you tell me more? Let's really explore this further on Tom's behalf. Right? That is a great way to get your voice out there and to build alliances because that's partly what she wants, that when she does speak up and give her own opinion, she wants to make sure that she's got those alliances out there. So I think I would
Ooh,
start with a baby step like that.
that's great. So let me ask, in addition to that, do you have catchphrases or ways to start a sentence that sound assertive that someone like Grace can just adopt?
Absolutely. And where you'll find most of those is not in this book, but you may recall in my audiobook, Nice Girls Don't Speak Up and Stand Out.
Yeah.
When I started writing that book and I realized this book begs to be read. Not, I mean, for me to read the book and have it be audio, not to have people read it. It begs to be heard, rather. And so that's why I went back to the publisher and I said, could we make this an audiobook? I don't want this to be a paperback book. People have to hear these messages. So obviously, I would recommend that book for her.
Of
Uh,
course.
yeah, because there's so many tips in there. But I think I would start her with simple ones like, and again, I wouldn't coach everyone to do this. So I don't want everyone to take this as, oh, we all have to do this, because it's not the case. But in her case, it'd be something like, um, let me make sure I understood what everybody said, and then let me add how I see this. Okay.
Huh.
And I think in that way, she doesn't feel as if she's being out there just to have her voice heard. Right? Because sometimes women get coached to, hey, look, it doesn't matter. Just say what you have to say. No, some women like Grace. I'm picturing a timid woman, a smart, timid, I'm picturing actually a smart, timid, attractive woman, okay, who has gotten by on all of that and that needs to develop a new brand for herself. And so, as
Right.
part of that brand, is that correct?
Yes. And these things like one of the things she has said to me is, I love scripts.
Ah,
So,
I love scripts.
so those kind of phrases that I think she would do well with them. And they sound great
Yes,
to me. They sound right for me. They sound right to me for her.
for her, exactly. So
Yeah.
to be able to say something in a meeting like, before we go any further, excuse me, I would like to summarize what I heard and add something to it.
Right.
All right. And so if I heard you correctly, Tom, this is what you're saying. Did I get that right? Okay. Then I would just like to add this piece from my perspective. And again, this is how she can start because eventually you want her to get to the place that she's able to say, Tom, I heard what you said. And I think we need to add this to it.
Yeah.
I would have her use I a lot more often.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's probably difficult for her.
I'm running my conversations with her and I don't hear that and I haven't asked. So that's a good one. I will put that
Yeah.
on my radar.
So
Good.
that'd be another part of the script that I'd give to her that she more often needs to start her phrases with I. I believe, I see, what I've noticed. I think she needs to start using those eyes more often to own it.
Oh, I like those. Those are great.
Mhm.
So let me ask one. Uh, I know you've talked about this, and I'm wondering whether your ideas about it have evolved. So let's imagine Grace sitting in a meeting. She says something, has an idea, it doesn't get a lot of traction. 7 minutes later, some guy speaks up with the same idea, and everybody goes, "Great idea, Robert!" Right?
Mhm.
For Grace, as a timid woman, what words would you
Her
give her?
script is going to be Robert, thank you so much for expanding on my idea. What it made me realize is I left a few pieces out. So let me just add to what you said, and then I think we'd have my full idea on the table.
Ooh. So listen, I think that would be great if she could do that. But knowing Grace as I do, I think she would be so paralyzed and fearful that she won't have a new idea. And my question is, could she claim the original idea? And if so, what would
Sure.
that sound like?
Sure. Okay. Let's do it this way then. Saying, Robert, I so appreciate you expanding on my idea. It sounds like you agree with it, you buy into it. I think with your expertise and my expertise combined, we can move this forward.
Oh, nice. So she also amplifies.
She amplifies, she thanks him, and she puts it into an action mode. But she doesn't let him get away with stealing it.
Great. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So that one, which I feel can happen to any woman,
Yes.
is a nice pivot point for me to go to client number two.
Okay.
So client number two is on the other end of the spectrum. Um, to put it nicely, she has sharp elbows. A woman named Nicole, super smart, really high achiever. The company loves her, and they would really like her to stop pissing people off because
Mhm.
she's a little abrasive. So, uh, one of the things that you talk about with women taking control is about being direct. So, how would you coach Nicole around being able to be direct without kind of overcorrecting and people going, she's such a bitch?
Yeah, and this is hard. This is hard, and it's what makes it such an excellent question is because when women get that feedback, they usually go to the other extreme and then they don't say anything. Right? If they get when they get feedback, you're too direct, you're too opinionated, you're too whatever it is. They stop the behavior entirely, and
Right,
that's the wrong thing. As we both know, that's the wrong thing to do. It's not about stopping. It's about understanding what behaviors you can add to your skill set to just mitigate it. So in this case, I would give Nicole, and by the way, Nicole sounds like the kind of clients that we've had referred to us many times, the ones that are too valuable to lose and too painful to keep,
right.
right?
Yes, yes,
She's
absolutely.
one of those.
Yeah, although she's not that big a disruptor, but
Okay.
but yeah, people are upset with her.
Yeah, well, she leaves bodies in her wake, but she manages up well because and she delivers. And so that as a result, she's people tolerate her. I mean, we saw this a lot in entertainment. And I'm not saying you're entertainment clients. I'm just saying when we did a lot of business with entertainment, we saw this kind of behavior often. And it was acceptable. It was more acceptable in certain scenarios than it was in others. But many times when those people left the entertainment business and went to another business, they found that those behaviors weren't acceptable in the least.
Yeah,
So,
yes.
so in Nicole's case, my first tip for her is you may never give your opinion first again,
Oh, okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
You,
That's good.
you may never give your opinion first again.
Even with her own team?
Now, that's a little bit different. It's a little different with your own team because with your own team, you don't want to keep them guessing. You also don't want to over direct. So with a team, it's about putting an idea out there and saying, now let's build on it. Here's my idea. Here's what I'd like to see as the end result. Now let's talk about how we're going to work together to get there. But it sounds like what Nicole might be doing, and I don't know this, with her team, is prescribing the problem and the solution all at once, right? And how you're going to get to the solution. So she may be being overly directive. Is that possible?
Yeah, that is possible. She's pretty good about being curious. So I'm really thinking about that. I'm running that through. And listen, I'll take it to her, Lois. I mean, it's a
But
great idea.
the fact that she's really curious, this will work in her favor because when I say my first tip for her is that she cannot give her opinion first, my second tip is you have to ask a question first.
Ooh, nice. So even if she's in senior staff meeting, or she's
Yeah,
at the table, but right? I mean,
she's in a senior staff with her staff, you mean, or with her
no, no,
peers?
no, with the CEO staff.
She's in a meeting with him. She hears something and she said, before I give my opinion, I'd really like to know, Tom, how did you come up with this idea? Or where do you see this going? Or do you see?
I do. And what's making me smile here is that I know that that kind of socialized interest is a nice girl behavior.
Yes, it absolutely is, which is why I didn't ask Grace to do this,
Right, right.
right?
Yes.
It wasn't
Uh-huh.
the tip or the script I gave Grace because Grace needs to find her voice. On the other hand, Nicole needs to show that she gives a crap what other people think, because usually that's what gets women in trouble who are on the far end of the
Mm.
not nice scale. It's like I say, on one end you have Sally Field, on the other end you have Martha Stewart, right?
Mm.
They're both successful women in their own right. But, Tom, one of the things you and I talk about is the beer test.
Yeah.
And who do you want to sit down and have a beer, a cup of coffee, or a glass of wine with? And frankly, Nicole doesn't sound like that kind of person to me, but Grace does.
Yeah, that might be true. I mean, when I think about Nicole in the workplace, my sense is she absolutely knows what she thinks and she does not suffer fools.
And she doesn't suffer.
Fools.
Okay. And she doesn't have to suffer them because there's a third part of this. And the third part is she's allowed to give her opinion next. That's the third step, but it has to tie into what the person she just asked the question to answered. Because you can't do it if you didn't listen to the answer. So if I say to you, before I give my opinion, Tom, I'd like to know what you think about X, Y, how you got to this place and where you see it going. And then you tell me, well, I got here because of my experience. And what I'd like to see us do is take this out into the marketplace, within the next 6 to 8 months. I go, I see. So you have some urgency around it and it's based on your experiences. Great. Let me add my experience to that so it can fully flesh out the idea. What I would bring to the table would be XYZ. And I think if we add this to the equation, then we'd have a really robust idea to roll out and to bring to our shareholders.
Wow. So I I get that. I'm also hearing the echo of what you're proposing to Grace around acknowledging and amplifying and adding.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's so much of it, really. In this case, I already know that Nicole has an opinion, but she just can't keep putting it out there so early that people feel stepped on or not heard, right? Or feel as if what they have to say isn't going to matter.
So, would you at some point talk with someone like Nicole about likability, the beer factor?
I would talk about my experience of them, how I experience them, because usually somebody who is in the room with me who's not listening. I mean, I will talk about that. Yeah, I like to use this example, and I've talked about it in one of my books, maybe in more of my books. I don't remember. Um, this guy Ken, that I was maybe my third or fourth coaching client.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, this is how long ago this was, and I'll never forget where we were sitting, and he was kind of like Nicole, okay, but he embarrassed his boss's boss in a meeting by just kind of doing what he did, which was to know everything. It's like he knew everything. And so I never forget, at one point, I looked at Ken and I said, Ken, where did you learn that you had to be the smartest guy in the room? And he looked at me and I said, well, we've been sitting here for 30 minutes and I haven't said anything and you've talked the whole time. So you must think you know a lot and that maybe I don't know enough. He said, well, no, that's not it at all. Blah, blah. I said, that's how people are experiencing you.
Right.
And so that's what I would use with Nicole. Rather than maybe talk about likability per se, I might say, and I'm trying to think of somebody who I found not likable. I might say something like, when we're working together, I often feel as if you're not listening to what I have to say, that it's not really that important to you. And if I feel that way, then other people have to feel that way too. And so part of our work together, it really is about how are you going to build the kind of relationships that will work for you, not against you. Now, that's not a problem that Grace has,
No, it is not
right?
a problem that Grace has.
That's a problem that Nicole has, that
And
if she's not careful, it's going to work against her.
and that got reflected in her 360.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right. So she got that, had the mirror held up.
yes, and by the way, as the coach, I agree with you. For me to speak for myself about my experience with her, that's yes, I agree. That is
Hmm.
not a problem. So let me ask you this. Let's imagine that Nicole, where people already feel she's going to tell them what she thinks no matter whether they want it or not. Let's imagine that she has a tough message to give someone, let's say to one of her direct reports around performance or a peer around agreements not kept. How would you coach Nicole to think about delivering a tough message and not having it trigger people to go, see, there she is. She's such a bitch.
Yeah, and that's where, I love that model, the Descript model, and I do have it in all of my books. And the Descript model is DESC, RIPT, and it's a model for how you give feedback to anybody. And it could be because you're you can be too abrasive, but it could also be because you're afraid. And you're afraid people aren't going to like you if you give the feedback. So it works equally well for Grace or for Nicole. But in this case, since you asked me about Nicole, I would say to her to use the descript model. So the D stands for describe why I want to have a conversation, explain how I see things, and elicit how you see things. The S stands for specify what I would like. And the C is clarify consequences. What will the consequences be? So let
So
me just go
will you
ahead.
go back and just do the DESC again and just call them out? Sorry.
Sure. The D is describe why I want to have a conversation.
And that might include because of your work product.
Tom, I'd like to talk to you about what I've noticed with some of your work product lately.
Great. So that's the D. That's why I
That's the
want to talk
D.
to you.
And you notice I used an I message. I'd like to talk to you about what I noticed. Okay. So that's very important because I'm not pointing a finger. This is my conversation. I want to have a conversation with you about this.
Mm-hmm.
The E stands for explain how I see things and elicit how you see it. Okay,
Okay.
so that might sound like this. What I've noticed, Tom, is that when I get work product from you, I often have to spend time going over it for accuracy, typos, just to make sure it's ready to pass on to management. And so I feel as if the time isn't going in on the front end to make sure that the end product is worthy of moving forward to either our clients or our management. And I'd like to know how you see that.
Lois, can I just tell you, this is one of the reasons I love you. That was amazing. That's just so great. It's so clear, so non-judgmental, it's so factual, it's precise. It's just, I mean, I love hearing you do that stuff.
Thank you. And thank you. And I want people to notice how it was behavioral. It's not like you're
Right,
being lazy or stupid or it's none of those things for me.
right.
That's why it's called a desk script. It's like I had to prepare for this in advance. I mean, obviously I could do this off the top of my head because I've done it so often, but most people will have to plan this in advance. And now let's play it out so your listeners can hear, Tom. So Tom, if I'm saying this to you, what might you say back to, how do you see it, Tom? That's how I see it.
Uh, I, I guess maybe I thought I was doing good enough.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough that you thought you were doing good enough. And how could you know any differently unless I told you? So, be that as it may, there's a phrase every woman needs in her repertoire. Be that as it may, because it disagrees without being disagreeable. Be that as it may, let me tell you exactly 3 things that I need in the future. And then I just list whatever
And
those 3 things are.
now is this the S?
And this is the S. This is the no. This is the S.
Which is,
Specify what I want.
got it. So now you're
Right?
going to tell me 3
I,
things.
yeah, I just Tom, there's 3 things that you will be on top of it if I start seeing these things, these 3 things. And one, make sure you research thoroughly, that no data is left out. And I know in this day and age of so much data proliferation, it's really hard. But I think you can do a better job of making sure we have the data necessary to make good decisions. So I put a little more time into that. Second of all, I put more time into proofing my work. Okay. I think once you deliver it to me, don't expect that I am going to proof it and I'm going to be your proofreader and editor, because that's not what I expect at your level. I expect more of that. And then the third thing I would like you to do, and this is just in the beginning, if you can get this to me, maybe like 24 hours ahead of the deadline, let's review it together. So we make sure in the beginning we're on the same page. So we don't have this discussion again. And then I think you'll really have gotten it. Now, is that something you can do?
Yes. Yes, that would be very simple.
All right. Well, then I really appreciate it. If you do that, then I know that we're going to be able to move forward. Uh, I'm going to move forward more confidently with what you present to me. And that in turn will be presented to our management, and it's going to make both of us look good.
Was that the C?
That's the C. That's the consequences. There's positive consequences. Now,
Great.
there can be negative ones.
Right.
But
Right.
in my first conversation with someone, I'm not going to use negative consequences.
Well,
I'm
but
going to,
you're getting agreement on my end.
yeah,
Like, so why would you threaten me?
exactly.
Yeah.
And Tom,
That's really helpful. I mean, and by the way, I hear how it might help Grace also.
mhm,
Um, and it's
just
just great.
preparing.
Yeah, but it's great to hear what it really sounds like. You know, it's just hugely helpful.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah. So let me ask a different one. So that one's very kind of verbal. Here's the script. Here's what I'm going to say. What about nonverbals for someone like Nicole? Are there things that you would say beware of or try this instead as nonverbals?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that, Tom. But as nonverbal, and I'm getting this mental picture of Nicole, and it could be totally wrong because, I never met her and we've never even talked about her. But I'm getting this picture of someone who's pretty intense, who is probably sitting in a meeting pretty wound up, right? And so it's almost like she's ready to spring.
Well, she's certainly fast thinking. I don't find her wound up in her energy. Like I don't feel like she's ready to pounce,
Spring?
but
You don't. Okay.
she is alert. I've never been with her when she's distracted. I've never been with her when she's tired. She is
Mhm.
just like, I mean, she is the Energizer Bunny. And I think she goes from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and she is always in top form.
Okay. And so let me ask you, Tom, since you've observed her, how does that behavior work for her? And in what ways does it sometimes work against her?
Well, I don't get to observe her like with her team or anything. With me, how it
Right.
works, I experience her as completely engaged. So
Mhm.
our conversations go by fast and we cover a lot of territory. She doesn't need to go over stuff twice. She's like,
Mhm.
she's ready to move on. So, um, I mean, the downside for me behaviorally with Nicole is, and we've talked about this, just we haven't used this word, which is she's just not a great listener.
Okay. And that's not necessarily nonverbal behavior. When you talked about the nonverbal behavior, I was thinking about head nods. I was thinking about how she sits, how she.
Right, right.
That was all what I was trying to get a hold of. But you're right. It's that not listening part that made me feel as if she's ready to pounce, because she may be what I call a fast listener. So that,
Yes, very
right?
much, very much.
Yeah. And so that as people are talking, she's getting it all, but she's giving no nonverbal feedback that she's getting it. And then she just goes either on to the next subject or she inserts herself into the subject. but there's not a lot of back and forth.
Like I am nodding my head at you right now.
Yes, exactly. That's not something you'd probably get from her.
That's interesting. I will have to watch. And I, off the top of my head, Lois, I would say I agree with you, but I will watch for it. But that's great. That's really helpful.
Yeah, because I've seen these people and I tell them all the same thing about you're a fast listener, which actually just is a really nice way to say you're a crummy listener.
Exactly. That's why I'm laughing. Yes.
Yeah. Um, and so that if you really want people to feel heard, and that's what's important, you need to slow down, take a beat, maybe even nod your head sometimes. Not just nod your head, tilt your head as you're listening to someone. A head tilt always means I'm listening.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I need a chiropractor for that. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
I'm
Yeah.
always out tilting. So, so can I mean, first off, this is for both Nicole and Grace. I feel like I got tools today, so thank you. I'm excited. Can I go back to zoom out for a minute,
Sure,
thinking about kind of putting a bow on all of this?
sure.
I wonder, first off, I wonder, am I going to put you on the spot with this question? But I wonder if you have words of encouragement for women who are tired, women who are just like, it's a hard road and they're tired and pissed. Do you have encouragement for them?
When you say they're tired and pissed and discouraged, and they're in the workplace,
Yes.
and they're
Yes.
still working.
And they feel like I've been doing this all my life and it's getting worse right now and blah blah blah. I mean all those things that you feel if you found a kindred spirit. Do you have words of encouragement?
Yeah, I do. I'll never forget. Oh, it had to be 25 years ago. I had a psychic reading.
Huh. Did
I
you?
may have talked to you about Astro John, right? I
Yes. Oh my
remember Astro.
God. Yes.
That was a long time ago.
That was a
Astro John.
long time ago.
Did you ever
Wow.
get in touch with Astro John?
No, I didn't.
No, okay. Just of course, somebody had given me a gift of a reading. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And at that time we didn't have Zoom, so it was by phone, but this person couldn't see me. We didn't even have, I don't know if I was on the internet at that time. And that's how long ago it was. You probably couldn't find me on the internet. Anyway, all he had was my date of birth and place of birth. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, when you feel as if you need to stop what you're doing for a living because it's becoming too much, because you're tired, take a break. Because all it means is that you're overwhelmed in the moment. And you need to take a break and you need to take a look at it from outside because you're a worker bee and you work, 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 and you work hard and you get a lot of reinforcement from that. But it's also exhausting. And so at those moments when you feel as if, and he was absolutely right, because I don't know how he picked up on this, but I was at a place where I thought, I don't know how much longer, I'm going to be doing coaching. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be doing consulting. This is just draining me. It's just taking too much away. But his simple comment was take a break. It's
Mm.
your cue to yourself to take a break.
So am I right that in this modern day and age, modern, not back
Yeah.
then, is this self-care?
That's exactly where I was going to go with it. And that's why you probably noticed in the book, there's a whole chapter on self care, which our mutual colleague Sherry Betts wrote a whole book on self care, the ABCs of self care. And she introduced me to self care, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago.
Cool.
And I'll never forget, we were sitting in my jacuzzi in my backyard. And she told me she wanted to write a book about self care, and I kind of poo pooed it. I said, who's going to buy a book about self care? Like people want to know about how they're going to get the corner office. Nah, 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 in my typical Lois way. She was ahead of her time because the fact is that, there's a whole chapter now that I call unselfish self care, that we have a different generation of workers than I was, right? You and I grew up in this generation where our parents taught us to work hard, keep your nose clean, right? all that stuff. I mean, it was just really about work, 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 work. Um, we have a new generation of workers, whether they're 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds, they don't want to work like we worked. And that's okay. And so when you have people who say, I'm tired, uh, I've like had enough of this, it's like it's overwhelming to me. That's the time to say, how good am I taking care of, or how well, I should say, am I taking care of myself? Right? And so, have I taken a break? Have I taken a vacation? Do I take a walk around the block at lunchtime or do I work through lunch? If I love massages, when was the last one I had? If I love to take a bike ride, when was the last bike ride I had? If I love to take walks with my friends at the park, when was the last time I did that? So, the answer to your question for me is the encouragement is around how well am I taking care of myself? It's not about what you're doing per se, it's about what you're doing to yourself, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
It does. That's great. Again, it's a version of take control, right?
It's about taking control of your life and not letting other people have as much control over it.
Right.
Because we wind, it's like one of the women I interviewed for the book, not doctor, her name's Nita Jane. She said, we get into this place that we come to believe this chaos is normal. We normalize chaos. And we think this is just how life is supposed to be. I'm supposed to have this hard job. I've got these 3 kids. I got to chauffeur them different places. I got a husband who needs this, that, or the other thing. We normalize chaos and we have to stop normalizing chaos. We have to start. And one of the best things I learned from her was saying, can I do this? Yes. Do I have to do this? Right?
Mm.
It's a should or a could. I
Uh-huh.
keep saying I should do this. Well, should I really do this or is it a could? I could bake those brownies for my brother's birthday. If I do that, I'm not going to have the time to to go to the movies with my partner. And that's important to me too. So I could bake those brownies. Should I? Probably not.
That's
Right?
great. Yeah, that's great. One of the things that I loved about the book was that you seemed to devote a good deal of attention to younger women in the workplace, and I really appreciated that. Also, because, by the way, in through my volunteer work, I get to talk to a bunch of those women, and I
Yes.
love them, and they're exciting, and it's great. It was just great to see your frame of reference about them. I love that.
I'm so
And
glad.
and then when you were writing about leadership, you wrote the words that I have heard you say, oh my God, I don't know how many times of like, you know, if ever there was a time for women to lead, this is the time. And it was so poignant to me to think, you've been saying that for as long as I've known you.
Hmm.
And it's still true.
More true, maybe.
More true, maybe. But listen, I do want to end with gratitude to you. Going back forever and ever for when you plucked me out of whatever I was doing and made me coach, but also, what you do for my family and our enduring friendship. I am so grateful.
And I am grateful for our friendship, Tom. Just how lucky have I been at all of these decades later? And they are decades later.
I know. I know. So thank you.